So Soren Borchersen says, what's your favorite leitmotif from film, opera, or whatever, and why? So I don't normally have favorites. Normally, these things go in phases, and normally my favorite piece of music is whatever I'm really studying or focusing on at the time. But I think I do have a favorite leitmotif. So first things first, a leitmotif is a theme or a set of notes which represents a character, place, object, or concept. This is something that I've explained in my Lord of the Rings videos, and the Lord of the Rings scores are just so dense with leitmotifs. Leitmotifs normally come in film, music, or opera, because in film or opera they can latch themselves onto a place or a concept or an object or a character. So if you think of the Lord of the Rings, you have the Shire theme. And the Shire is a place. Or you have the Fellowship theme. And the Fellowship is a concept. Or you have Sauron's theme, which goes something like... And Sauron is a character. Or you have the Ring, which is an object. And you'll notice as well how Sauron and the ring are linked, right? That Sauron goes, and the ring goes. So music can be used to link these different concepts together. And that's how they can be used as, leitmotifs can be used as an amazing dramatic tool in film music or in opera. So my favorite leitmotif actually comes from Parsifal. Now, Parsifal is the last opera written by Richard Wagner, and Richard Wagner was almost exclusively an opera composer, but he was really the champion of the leitmotif. So, my favorite leitmotif from Parsifal, I call it the Eucharist theme, and I'll explain why I call it that in a moment. But I'm going to play it for you. It's the first notes that we hear in the opera. It's the very first thing that we hear in the opera, and it sets the tone for the whole opera. So here are the first notes that we hear, and you'll have to excuse my piano playing because I'm using a keyboard which is a bit... It's not the best keyboard. I need to buy a new one. Buy it cheap, buy it twice. But listen to this theme and try and listen to the story that these notes tell. As with all Wagner's operas, he's trying to set up this kind of mythic epic, this sort of Arthurian legend, King Arthur, the sword and the stone. A bit like Lord of the Rings is this sort of Arthurian mythic legend. And Wagner's trying to do the same thing here. And he has this contour of rising up. We're aspiring towards the divine. But in our sin, in our shame, we are not worthy. And yet there is hope of redemption. And you'll notice that this is a beautifully balanced theme. It takes after the principles of plain chant and of Palestrina, who was the classic Renaissance Italian religious composer, that for every rise, there's then a corresponding fall, and then a fall balanced by a rise, just like you'd find in plain chant or Palestrina. So for now, we can call this the Eucharist theme. And over the course of this opera, what Wagner does is he splits this theme into three parts, three leitmotifs. So one leitmotif becomes three. So throughout the opera, he goes to connect this first musical idea, this ascending line, with dramatic references to the divine. And then the second part, this tragic leap downwards, he goes on to associate with grief, sin, and human failings. And then the third part becomes the theme for the spear, and the spear is a symbol of redemption or the hope of redemption. So this contour of rising towards the divine and then failing in grief and sin, but then this hope of redemption, that's literally what Wagner does by splitting this long theme into 3 separate leitmotifs. And so, over the course of this opera, it becomes apparent that this is what the Eucharist theme is expressing. In the first 5 bars of the opera, we've narrated the trajectory of the whole story. All the central dramatic themes are spelt out in this leitmotif: aspiration towards the divine, human failure and torment, and the hope of redemption. This theme reappears in full form at a central moment of Act 1, where they're reenacting the Eucharist. The Eucharist is this Christian ritual of taking the blood and body of Christ in order to sort of renew their spirits. And the congregation sings, "Take this my body, take this my blood." And they sing it to that theme that I just played. And so the music is again outlining this arc of aspiration, suffering, and redemption. So, in the first few bars of the opera, he's seeded this idea of Eucharist, of aspiring towards the divine, being unworthy of receiving it, and having the possibility of redemption or renewal. Even the tonality, A flat major, falling to C minor, rising back to A flat major. Even this reflects the trajectory of the opera. We are aspiring towards A flat major, we fall, but then we can rise again to a renewed A flat major. And at pivotal moments of the opera, this is what happens. The opera starts firmly in A flat major, in this state of purity and innocence. But then in the second act, it falls into sin, into minor modes and dissonance. But in the third act, it climbs its way back out again, back into a renewed, elevated, even more pure state of A flat major. And in the final scene, this leitmotif has shed its minor fall. It no longer goes. Instead, the leitmotif becomes part of the ritual. Always rising upwards, always changing key, eternally repeated like this chant which floats ever upwards into the heaven. And so on, it repeats itself again and again until the final triumphant iteration of So that is my favourite leitmotif, and I hope I've explained why. I actually talk about Parsifal in more detail in my course 14 Pieces. 14 Pieces is designed to introduce you to 14 amazing masterpieces of classical music, but also it uses each piece to teach you a core concept, a core principle of classical music. So as you're discovering these pieces, you'll learn more about how to listen to classical music as a whole. In fact, there's even an entire section on how to listen to music. So if you want to check that out, it's absolutely free. You can visit the link below and you'll be taken to 14 Pieces. I'm really proud of this course and you'll get it absolutely free and it'll show you how to listen to classical music. So if you're interested in taking this further, then check that course out. Thank you for watching and I hope this has answered your question.